everyone, and welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I am your host, Mary Catherine Ham. I'm here with my co-host, Vic Mattis in the Washington Free Beacon. There's a lot going on. We got some, now it can be told from Dr. Phil, doing a smackdown on The View, which we want to get to for sure. We've got some Hunter Biden news. Hunter Biden standing up for himself, and that always goes well. We got some Biden news. We got some Trump news, legal, of course. And news from the Senate about Mitch McConnell, which broke nicely before the show. So we'll get to all that. Oh, and I think you've got a bone to pick with Wendy's. We'll get to all that. Before that, what's going on, Vic?
Hello, Mary Catherine. Doing just fine. I want to wish you a happy leap year day.
Oh, that's right.
I got an email from one of my various medical email senders, this one from LabCorp, saying, happy leap year day. What are you going to do special on your extra day of 2024?
Oh.
And I guess that's one way to think about it. If you're an optimist, I have an extra day to do things that I wouldn't normally do because it's an extra day in the year. But of course, for us, it just rolls. It's another day of work.
Yeah.
The way I thought about it when LabCorp asked me this question was, well, it's another day of pain. It's another day of sciatica. Another day of trying to stay in shape and do my burpees.
I'm glad you asked.
Well, I mean, LabCorp will be happy to know that I'm trying to do the burpees in spite of my sciatica, which is insane.
I don't think. Yeah. Are you going to. How does sciatica work? Are you going to make it worse, or are you going to?
Probably. It's a compression of the nerve, right?
Yeah,
it's the lower back. There, I guess. And the compression causes the pain, the sciatic nerve, which is in the gluteus maximus, shall we say.
I do remember this from having been. When I was pregnant, I would get sciatica issues. That's a frequent pregnancy issue.
I am not pregnant
yet.
I'm not a pregnant person, but the sciatic nerve goes all the way down to the ankle. Mm-hmm. And physical therapists will say, motion is lotion, so you want to keep on moving, which is good. So I did power press this morning, which is insane. And then I walked for a little bit.
Yeah, walking is good.
So that's good. But bending and putting on socks is horrendous.
Is this just do you just have to that all that needs to loosen up at some point and then eventually
it needs to decompress, which is, you need to let it sort of, it takes time. Some people say that, sciatica could go on for a year. That's crazy.
Oh, wow.
There's a difference between chronic and acute. We could do a whole health episode here.
Oh, my gosh.
Getting hammered news for your health.
Let's get in touch with LabCorp, see if they want to be a guest.
Or you can take some meds. Like I'm on, I take a couple Oxy an hour. I'm just kidding. I would never do that.
Those aren't prescribed. Those are street.
Well, that has nothing to do with the sciatica, though. Mary Catherine, how are you? And what are you going to do something special for Leap Year
now
Day?
That you ask, I feel like I should do something special.
And do your kids know that it's the 29th?
I feel like I haven't talked to them about this. You know what?
March
I was keenly aware of Leap Day as a child because I had one friend whose birthday was February 29th.
Wow.
Elizabeth, growing up. And Elizabeth, it was no end of fascination about the fact that Elizabeth was only 4 years old. Or Elizabeth was only, or
still a child.
Yeah, she's when we were 8, she turned 2,
Right.
Because
that's amazing.
And that was, we could talk about that for hours as 8-year-olds.
Yes. I'm still thinking about it right now. I'm trying to figure out how old I am now.
Oh.
I can't do math, though.
Yeah.
And I don't want to really reveal my age, so.
Well, I'm not going to reveal how old Elizabeth is now, but it's younger than I am.
Okay.
Because she's only celebrating birthdays on the 29th. So nice. I think I have 2 leap birthday
friends.
Happy
birthday to her.
Yes. Happy birthday to all those folks who only get one every 4 years. No, I'm not doing anything special. And now I feel this is modern society. Now I feel bad about it. Like I should have been more productive on Leap Day. I didn't do the power press.
I'm still trying to figure out how old I am. I'm sorry. I can't do it. I think it's, I have to, okay. Mary Catherine, you tell me what's going on in your life, and I'm going to do a little scratch here.
Okay, he's going to do some math.
Because it's every 4 years. Is that right?
If you need help, I work with my daughter on the regular on math. No, everything's good. The toddler is...
I'm 12.
Oh, there you go. The toddler is speaking a lot more these days.
Yes,
we're getting a lot of words, which is very fun. They get so fun when they first start doing this stuff, and then you start interpreting things. So We have outside, which is outside.
Oh,
Outside. And she has a really she wasn't saying no.
Uh-huh.
Now we have no. And no's a real tricky one because they want your child to have this in their vocabulary.
Sure.
Like the experts say they got to have. But she had a stop,
Uh-huh.
and she said, So I felt like she had it under control. Now she has no, but it's a very cheery no.
Oh,
So
no.
the other day I was like, give mama a hug. And she's like, no.
But
it's
does she understand what no is?
Yeah. Like she's
So,
using it
yeah.
appropriately. She
Okay.
didn't want to give me a hug.
But in a friendly way.
Yeah. But you know what?
Pleasant.
I think
Pleasant.
it's like she's already a modern kid, right? Because she knows her boundaries
Okay.
and she's up speaking. No. She now says zip when we zip her clothing. So that's a new one. But I do like outside.
Outside.
And then anything that she sees that should be
Mhm.
outside, like if she sees I have
Mhm.
my rum
Mhm.
themed coffee mug
Yes.
has a turtle on it.
Cane Rock shirt.
Yes.
Yes.
My Cane Rock mug has a turtle on it, and she goes, outside? Because the turtle belongs outside. So we're putting it together, guys. We're getting communication.
I'm going to tell you this now. I don't know if you've done it with your other kids. Remember, write down the funny words.
I know.
Because I used to think all the time that I'm going to remember
That
them.
you'll never forget them. I know.
I forgot most of them. I remember for my daughter, mostly my daughter, my son would say, instead of escalator, he would say akaka, and we just knew what that meant. But my daughter, she had a lot of gems. Instead of she loved that show, Princess. What's her name? The one Sophia, the one who's I was a princess
Sophia the
overnight,
First.
and I became a princess overnight.
Yeah.
That one. She used to call it Princess Nafisa, and then she said, but she has her ambient, which is the amulet, the ambient. Yeah.
Cute.
So that I remember. But
My brother had from a show from the 80s, because
Uh-huh.
you get your shows mixed up when you're a child.
Yeah,
Haxadoozer.
I've never heard of that.
That's Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh,
So in
great show.
our house, it's always been called Haxadoozer.
Haxadoozer.
I have a very specific one from the ham childhood that is still used to this day. I had a pair of red and tan Argyle socks,
Mm-hmm.
and I hated them. They had the seam right on the top, so it would creep under your toe.
Oh, yeah. It
And they
feels
were
like there's something there.
For whatever reason, I had to wear them
Yeah.
every now and then. It's not like we had a ton of socks, and I think they were winter socks, and my mom was like, I'm not throwing these away. They're perfectly good. And she didn't gentle parent about that, so she was like, I don't care if you don't like them. Wear them.
Right.
So I wear the socks. They're so
Pay
uncomfortable.
good money for those socks.
And I hated them so much. Well, one night when I was about 4, I woke up in the middle of the night, as children do. I was like, I can't sleep. And I decided to go tell my dad what the problem was. And he's like, I wake him up.
Oh.
Daddy, I can't sleep. He's like, why not? I said, my pillow is Argyle. And he said, I'm quite certain it's not. I said, my pillow is Argyle. And they couldn't understand it. He follows me down to the room. I show him my plain white pillow in its regular pillowcase. And eventually we realized, in my 4-year-old brain, Argyle meant uncomfortable. So ever since then, Argyle has been uncomfortable in the ham house. And does it not sound like an uncomfortable word?
Well, the arg.
Argyle.
Argyle. Right. And then it's become a part of your
It's
the
our-
lexicon,
yes.
the ham lexicon.
In the ham house, if something is Argyle, you know exactly
what
what
it
people are
means.
talking about. So there's that one. And then I will say my toddler has a pretty sophisticated and consistent thank you. She doesn't do the TH, but she goes, thank you.
Thank you.
And that one, it gets the job done. My second daughter,
Yes.
she had the intonation of thank you and was very consistent, but it was tita, tita.
But you knew what it meant. You knew what it meant because.
Yeah. So, it's a good time. It's going to be fun. I forgot how fun this stage is.
Yes. Yeah. The vocabulary stuff was a lot of fun. My daughter initially would say thank you. And I said, is that your Korean friend? I can say that. Can't I?
You can.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Oh, can I tell a quick story? This is
Please.
off script.
Please. This is a Friday.
Now, we may get to the University of Georgia story in general towards the end of
yeah.
this hour. It's like sort of heavy, but I want to note that one of the girls, there was a mugging on campus the same week as the murder. So it's been a rough week.
Yeah.
And then there was a student who died by suicide. So it's been tough. But the woman who was confronted with a handgun by a guy outside her dorm, she was asked for her phone. That's what he wanted to steal from her. And she said, I have a friend who has an extra phone inside. Let me call her and she'll get it for you. So she talks to this guy. She calls her friend and she, in Korean to her roommate, gives a description of the guy, tells him like his clothing, his height, everything. So when he lets her go, and I think he got her phone eventually, but when he lets her go, unharmed, thank goodness, they arrest the guy because she got a full description of him.
That is amazing.
So
now, what did she tell the guy she needed to get on the and what phone was she using?
She said, I need to use my phone to call my friend because she's going to bring you a phone. So she was like, I know.
Yeah, and then it just throws the guy
but
for a
worked.
loop. Yeah, the guy's like, what?
It worked. And then she gave the description. And I'm just saying, I don't know if Pig Latin's going to work for that in my case because I am not bilingual. But I just thought that was like quick thinking. Anyway, okay.
Very nice. And that would be in Hangul. In case any of our Korean listeners, we have many listeners in Seoul, will say, oh, there's no Korean language. It's Hangul.
Okay, thank you.
I used to work for Koreans at a Hallmark store.
He can say all this stuff. Okay.
It's true.
I took a turn there. Okay. Let's
Thank
get
you. That's a great
shall
story.
we get to the news?
Let's do it.
All right. Maybe I should have my toddler learn to say Mitch McConnell. It'd be too late, though, because he's stepping down from leadership.
Sooner than later.
Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, a legendary majority and minority leader of the Republicans in the Senate, has announced that he will no longer be the leader, and I believe plans to step down in the fall, correct?
Yeah, from leadership position.
From leadership. And there will be an election to find someone to replace him. Cornyn has already thrown his hat into the ring. Of course, there's just lots of talk about Mitch McConnell because Mitch McConnell, although reelected maybe a record number of times by the people of Kentucky,
yes,
is not beloved in all of the political circles.
No,
particularly by activists on either side.
On both sides,
right? He
gets no love from them.
No, and you know what? I think that's partly by design. Like, do we think do we think Senator McConnell was ever looking to be loved?
No.
By media, by right-wing activists, by left-wing activists? No.
I used to think that if you're hated by both sides, maybe you're doing something right.
Yeah.
I used to say that about Paul Ryan.
I think he's an example where that is largely true. Look, are there things during McConnell's career that I would say I wish things had gone differently?
Right.
I think, Obamacare repeal was always a bit of a pipe dream to begin with. So you can only make so much of it. But look, he has to deal with a caucus, and I think he's realistic about it, that has a Murkowski, that had a Jeff Flake.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course.
These are not consistent conservative votes.
It's easy for the bomb throwers who are not in a position to make anything happen to just complain and say how terrible things are and how we need to shake things up. And if I were there, I would do this. But they're not there. And when they're in that position, look, I mean, Mike Johnson's finding that out the hard way, obviously.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And McConnell, I think, frequently outmaneuvers his critics, knows a lot about how the Senate works. And when it comes to the Supreme Court and judicial nominees, which I care about a great deal, he has had real steel ones. Yeah. For dealing with that stuff, including but not limited to standing behind Brett Kavanaugh without blinking. Right. And any blink would have been enough.
Yeah. To fold on the most specious. I mean, it's so specious is the word I was going to say. It was so unbelievable how he was attacked. Yeah. On nothing. It turns out nothing.
And yet, do you remember the amount of pressure?
Absolutely.
The amount of pressure was insane. And I was in rooms with people who were just saying like the most outlandish accusations with absolutely nothing to back them up.
Yeah. And for a lot of these people, by the way, they feel like, he is a rapist, by the way.
Oh, no,
in their mind,
this is actually a theme
it's
of
case
this.
Closed.
This is actually a theme of this episode,
Yes,
perhaps, that
yeah.
people are just sticking with the stuff that's
Yeah.
not true.
That's right.
No matter how much egg you get on your face, you're just going to stick with it. Double down.
Yeah, that's right.
And so we'll get to some other subjects like that. But yes, I think you're right that they insist that was all good form.
But Mitch stuck to his guns. And the thing is, and I know there are a lot of arguments, obviously, for term limits. The plus side, of course, is that you personally develop the institutional knowledge that otherwise goes to all of your handlers. It's the civil servants who end up having more power in certain term limited situations because they know the back channels and they know how to get bills passed or not passed, right?
Right.
Mitch knew all of this. And, again, as you mentioned, when he was majority leader, every time you see a Supreme Court decision that's 6-3, he had a little bit to do with that.
Yes.
Right?
Well, and when I look back on the Garland stuff, so he said, "No, we're not considering him."
Oh, the outrage!
We're not considering a moment when the pressure was so high, and I think,
it was immense.
I must admit that I think I would have caved.
Yeah,
I would have caved.
I wouldn't
have caved on Kavanaugh. That one was so wrong,
right.
but it would have been very, very hard. And I don't pretend that even though I work in places where I was vastly outnumbered, that I would have kept like a spine of steel if I were in the Senate. I'm not sure, but I don't think I would have caved on Kavanaugh. But on the Garland thing, that one was tougher.
Right. I mean, if you're a true believer that the president has a right to, put somebody up for nomination and we will then, advise and consent and the whole deal. If you believe that, then you would have believed, regardless of the timetable or what time of year it was, that, okay, it's his right to, and then we can vote no against it. He wouldn't even consider it.
And it's not a crazy argument that the American people will choose the president. If they choose someone of the Democratic side, you'll just get your nominee several months later. And if it is a Republican president, that will change.
Right.
Because the people have decided so. Right. It wasn't a crazy argument.
No.
But
and it worked out.
That's a seat that would not have been a originalist juror.
That's right.
Had it not been for a jurist.
And then for some people,
what's the correct term?
A jurist.
Jurisprudence, whatever. Justice. Let's just say justice, Mary Catherine, because they're SCOTUS.
He's a jurist. He's a jurist.
Okay.
But no, and people are obviously not always satisfied with some of the Supreme Court justices over the years during the Trump years, like Neil Gorsuch or whoever.
Right.
Or certainly John Roberts. Before that, during the Bush administration, the point is the court still tilts conservative. He had a lot to do with that. And then when you're in the minority, the job is just saying no.
Right.
And preventing things like campaign finance reform, which would have empowered labor unions, for example. Merrick Garland, as you mentioned. I do get a kick out of him saying, I'm old. I'm 82. It's time for me to not be leader. Somebody's going to be 82 in November.
Yeah, and he's asking for another 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
No, I do think, I think Pelosi is around 82 and has stepped away from leadership. Yeah. They're not all stepping away from public life. They're just stepping away from leadership.
She's emerita, as you know, she's a speaker emerita.
It is worth noting that once you get over 80, generally, these folks are noticing and recognizing that maybe I should not be in this exact role anymore.
It's really quite remarkable because this is not to say that octogenarians are out of it and they're incapable of doing anything, right?
Right.
Some are in amazing shape physically and mentally, and I hope to be there.
Yeah.
Don't hold your breath. But what we're talking about is enormously difficult jobs. And I know people who have retired, let's say, from the medical profession, and they say that it's the best thing they ever did because they couldn't make, let alone having the hands for surgery or whatever, but even making the judgments.
Yeah.
That it gets harder. It's tough.
It's tough.
That's all we're saying.
I want to abide by maybe the Grassley standard. Like if you can still get up at 4 a.m. and run a couple miles. Yeah, like I guess
something tells me Chuck Grassley does not have sciatica.
Maybe you could ask him for some tips.
Yeah.
All right. So McConnell, an era is over.
Yeah.
And like, again, for all my disagreements with him, which happen, do I think that a Matt Gaetz would have been unblinking and effective in the same position? No, I don't. Yeah. And I'd prefer to have a guy who is smart and doesn't mind being disliked.
Practical.
Yeah.
And loves Asians. Just want to throw that out there. It's a common thing.
Oh my God.
I'm the reverse. It's rare it's the Asian man. It's a Friday show. We can say these things on Friday. Anyway. Okay.
Oh, man.
Moving on.
He's allowed to say it.
Yeah, I'm
All
allowed
right.
to say that. Good for him.
Let's go to SCOTUS.
Oh, right. Yeah.
We have some SCOTUS news. This is also doubles as 2024 news. The Supreme Court has agreed to weigh Trump's criminal immunity in historic case. Okay. So, in the January 6th related charges, the prosecutor being Jack Smith, which is such a casual name for a prosecutor,
No,
right?
it's easy to...
Jack Smith. Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland sounds
You're
like
not going to confuse it. There's no other Merrick Garlands on
prosecutor.
Google, I imagine.
Yeah. Jack Smith brings these charges, and Trump's argument, which I'm going to very shortly summarize, is just that I can do things because I am the president. I'm immune because you can't prosecute a president. It would create a really bad situation if you start prosecuting presidents once they're out of office, because then it's just going to be tit for tat and we're all going to go back and forth like this. That's not in legal terms, but that's the...
Yes, the words tit for tat might not be there, but the sentiment rings true.
And then the argument on the other side is that's crazy. You can't just do whatever you want when you're president and expect to never pay a price for it. Okay. But this does need to go to the Supreme Court because it's a pretty weird legal issue that we're dealing with in an unprecedented way, because the president is being taken to court in an unprecedented way, the former president. So the Supreme Court's going to hear it. They put it on a bit of a expedited track. April arguments, June decision. That still is a long time. The libs aren't happy about that because they want this thing to move right along.
Yeah, they're hoping to get a conviction before then.
Well, and what the SCOTUS said was that y'all hold while we figure this out.
Right.
Now, I believe Smith had requested y'all can let them go ahead while you figure this out, which I don't know how that works.
No, that really doesn't, and it just totally messes up the Democrats' timetable as a result, because they're now we're looking at, and we kind of knew this was going to happen. A lot of these trials take time. Yeah. And certainly we still need to know about ballot access for Trump, for example, and if he's going to be on the ballot. Illinois just announced. Yeah.
This is just a one official decision.
We can't,
Lord. It's fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think Smith's team, by the way, asked back in December also for them to figure this out real quick. They asked them to fast track it, and the Supreme Court declined to fast track it at that time. So we will go into June before they get a decision on that. Now, look, do I think Jack Smith is probably committed to run in this case between June and September? Yes, I do. But liberals are very mad that the Supreme Court is going to take its time to understand this, although not that much time. And also Smith asked them to.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what there's to object to here. We're in a weird situation. Okay. More 2024 news. The President of the United States took his physical this week. POTUS didn't get a cognitive test during his physical because his doctors, including his neurologist, do not believe he needs one. That is Voice of America News reporting that. So he's so fit, you see. This is a very Trumpian move, by the way.
Yeah.
Not only am I not taking a test, the reason I'm taking a test is because I'm so manifestly fit.
Right. In Trump's case, by the way, I think he would pass the cognitive test.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, but the more shocking thing, of course, were the lab work for Trump. Because,
right.
I think they mentioned rosacea.
No, they're like, let me read it. You will live forever eating 3 Big Macs per day and catch up on a well-done steak every night because you are a mean son of a bitch. That's your physical report.
Good genes. Winston Churchill smoked 8 cigars a day. There are some people who can just keep on going, and other people, the slightest thing sets them off, like me. say I'm like Mr. Glass.
You're delicate.
I'm very delicate. I can have only a little bit.
I don't know if you see what Vic has at a palm lunch, you might think he's less delicate. Yeah,
it's 1 3/4 of a martini, Mary Catherine. I got a kick in a very dark way. I don't mean that in a very happy, amusing way.
Right.
I got a kick out of. I was amused, I should say. Corinne Jean-Pierre, who was asked by the reporter from ABC News about, because people have these concerns. Did he take the cognitive test? And that's when she informed everybody, no. The neurologist says no. But on top of that, she throws in the line, he passes a cognitive test every day.
Oh, my God.
She actually said that.
I think the problem is he doesn't.
Yeah,
he's not passing muster, guys.
No. And but he has, there are people who will cover for him in the administration. Say, look, we get confused all the time. We mess up people's names all the time. Just the other day,
I just said juror and jurist.
Jurist, but
I'm in decline.
Lots of people I was just talking to Charles de Gaulle, and he was telling me he gets confused. My buddy Conrad Adenauer.
Happens all the time.
All the time.
That's your buddy, huh?
Yeah, it's my buddy. Yeah, of course he's my buddy. The Iron Man.
Biden's son.
Oh.
There's news on him too. Hunter Biden.
What a family.
He was testifying behind closed doors about all of his many shenanigans. Again, this is one of those things that I have to go study up on Hunter Biden's various shenanigans every time this story comes back up again. But it is important to remember that this is a story that the press actively censored.
Yeah, suppressed.
That the government, in collusion with Facebook and other social media companies, actively censored.
And the FBI knew
that it was real.
Biden's laptop.
Hunter Biden's own lawyers have conceded it's his laptop. It wasn't Russian disinformation, as the many intel experts of the United States of America told us in a letter. All those were lies. If you want to believe that Hunter Biden was not engaged in influence peddling, you have to try so hard to believe that he is an expert in things he is obviously not an expert in, that people were paying him millions of dollars.
Oh, Ukraine, China.
Right. Because he's an expert.
He
in
went
things.
to Georgetown like me. Maybe I should be on the board of Burisma.
It's not because of his proximity to his father.
No.
And it doesn't mean anything that his father was dropping by lunches with these guys. It doesn't mean anything that he's texting these guys. I need payment from you. My father is sitting next to me right now.
Yes.
Did you hear the update on that, by the way?
Which is...
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, some of it's hard because we don't have transcripts yet and it was behind closed doors, right? But Jim Comer, the congressman, seems to be optimistic that they got stuff out of this. Hunter Biden has said, he was asked this, right? He was asked apparently about that exchange, where he was at the Delaware home and he was talking to an executive from CEFC China Energy. And I have the quote. This is what he said, all right? This is what he said on the phone. He said, quote, "I am sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled. I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows, and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction."
Mm-hmm. And that is innocent because...
Go ahead, Mary Catherine. You probably know what he said.
Apparently, just according to sources who were inside, said he was just high when he sent that, and he wasn't actually next to his dad.
Yeah. Wasn't there. He was high. I guess it's fine then.
This is clever in that if you know the press is pathetic and behind you, they will take this defense on its face.
Yeah.
And then take anyone who objects to that defense and say, aha, so you would go after him over his addiction.
Yes, struggling. He's struggling with his addiction, and this is what you're doing? How dare you?
This guy is so shady. He is so shady. By the way, can I also just reiterate, because I always forget this one, and it popped back into my head. When he dumped the handgun, which, by the way, became an issue while he was like sleeping with his brother's widow.
The widow is the one who dumped it.
Cheating on his wife. Yeah. Anyway, they dumped this gun in a dumpster in an alley behind a grocery store, near a school, behind a grocery store or a restaurant or something. And when he was asked about it, he basically just pointed at some Latino workers and was like, probably those legal immigrants over there. I don't
That's
know.
okay.
You know what? He probably used the word undocumented. I don't want to be unfair. But he definitely pinned it on the brown guy near him.
Yes. You know what he might have said, Mary Catherine? So the White House had, by the way, issued a statement, in support of wanting to pass, a border bill. The term they use now are newcomers.
Oh, newcomers.
Yeah.
Neat.
So it might have been those newcomers who put the gun there.
As long as you call them newcomers, it's fine to accuse them of crimes they didn't commit.
The other thing is, of course, there is, photographic evidence that puts the two of them within the vicinity of each other around that time, and the metadata from the photo is like, okay, he was there, but was he not in the same? Maybe he meant that he was sitting at the table.
Right. No, he was in a different room. He exaggerated about the physical proximity. No, these people are full of it. They're full of it. The press is full of it when they tell you there's absolutely nothing here.
Mm-hmm.
They may be correct that there's not yet a check whose memo line says to influence, peddle with Joe Biden, vice president, and then president of the United States. I mean, I wouldn't put it past Hunter to have written that down at some point. So we may get there.
And I also believe he probably was high.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not doubting that. I'm not doubting that. But the other side is if you don't have any evidence, so don't have the investigation. That's if you don't have it right here, right now, don't look.
The other thing too is one of, and honestly, this is how politics works now, and it works right and left this way. Is Hunter Biden is defiant. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And that is
defiant.
That is the key, right? Is that you never acknowledge that you did anything wrong. Just come at every one of your critics, alleging that they're coming after you merely for your addiction.
You're
say that it's this. I'm just a loving father. If you're Joe Biden, I mean, if you're Hunter Biden, you can't say that you're a loving father because one of your kids you just didn't pay any child support for until you were taken to court for several years and forced to
DNA
prove
evidence.
Paternity. But anyway, that aside, you just characterize all this stuff in an insane way. The press takes it and runs with it. And apparently he says now, like, during the campaign, he's going to be out there making a case for himself. Because the problem is that he laid down too much for these dastardly Republicans. And lest you worry that the press might not carry water for him. Oh, no. There's a Yahoo and Huffington Post headline.
Yep.
Reporter asks Hunter Biden offensive question after hearing. Oh, do tell. What is this offensive question? Hunter Biden was asked by a reporter Wednesday if cocaine found at the White House in July was his, just after his lawyer complained that House Republicans are more interested in Biden's drug issues than asking pertinent questions in their impeachment inquiry of President Joe Biden. That's a legit question.
I want to point out the reporter who asked the question was the bag of yours.
Mm-hmm.
Is a young fella named Arjun Singh with the Daily Caller.
Okay.
And I met Arjun, perhaps a year or so ago, and he was looking to work in this country. He's from Canada.
Okay.
And I'm pleased to know. I mean, and I was a reference for him and some of our other friends. And I'm pleased to know, of course, that he is here legally.
This newcomer.
Yeah, this newcomer
is now asking
but
offensive
he's asking
questions
these terrible.
of the regime.
I don't know. Maybe he should have went back to Canada. No, I'm going to say good for you, Arjun, and happy.
By the way, I apologize for that.
Ask those tough
I just
questions.
said regime, and I should have just regime. I can speak. I'm a radio professional, folks. No, whatever. Good for him.
Yeah.
The guy with the known drug problem who's living at the White House and in and out of this specific place all the time.
The questions they used to ask not only Donald Trump, but also George W. Bush, that the press would scream.
And by the way,
these gaggles
is it the press's job now
mm-hmm.
to vet the questions asked of powerful people who are taking? By the way, Hunter Biden, at least he's taking questions, I guess, for a second.
Yeah. For the documentary, at least.
Oh, my God, yes. Can't wait to see that one. All right, what are we headed on to next? What is next in my list?
You want to talk finally about the cut. Is it that time? Is it that time?
Yeah, we should talk about the cut. Now, look, let's acknowledge, I think, that the cut, which is a New York Magazine product, is, probably clickbaiting me to some extent. And it's working. It's working because the cut came out with a real doozy. This is written by Catherine Jaser Morton, hyphenated.
Yes.
A columnist for the cut covering modern family life. Can parents prevent their sons from sliding to the right? And wow, it's something else.
There's a few assumptions baked into this, isn't there?
Well, so she notes the trend that young men are identifying increasingly as conservative or right-leaning, and young women are identifying increasingly, when they're not identifying as women, because that's a thing they're passing on. They're identifying as very progressive. So the youth are going in opposite directions on a gender basis, not that gender's real. And this woman has several teenage sons, and she's concerned that by allowing them to think and take in viewpoints and speak freely about those, that they're going to turn into little Joe Rogans.
That's right.
Little teenage Joe Rogans in your house.
You know, Mary Catherine, my life was so much happier before you sent me the link to this awful article.
So can I just read a characteristic paragraph?
Yes.
Okay. She talks about how the Jordan Petersons and the Joe Rogans of the world
Jordan Peterson too?
Yeah, are selling a grievance-based identity for young men. By the way, young men have grievances.
Yeah.
If you look at all the stats.
Boys.
Yes. Yeah. All the stats for boys and young men, they are falling behind women in huge, substantial,
they're not getting any help.
Horrible ways.
Yeah.
Like their suicides are higher. Their ability to finish education lower. Their ability to hold jobs lower. Yeah. Like there's real problems here that they have things to be concerned about. And I think it's fair in a girl power world and girl power messaging constantly that maybe they should start wondering, what about my issues?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So
privilege.
This is their privilege. The appeal of a grievance-based identity makes it hard to convince straight white boys that they in fact have plenty going for them and that they have no reason to feel aggrieved. Doing this convincing, whether it's in the classroom or at the dinner table, requires a light touch, which let me tell you, this lady's got. It's very easy. It's very easy and very satisfying to be doctrinaire. Social media encourages and rewards it. Okay, I'm in agreement with her. I think many of us adults are so entrenched in social media political discourse that it feels dangerously transgressive to allow a teen to articulate beliefs we disagree with at our dinner tables. When you spend your days reading infographics reminding you that being silent means being on the side of the oppressor, having a flesh and blood oppressor in training eating your spaghetti and meatballs can feel like a waking nightmare.
Do you spend a lot of time looking at those infographics?
That's not what I do. But coming down too hard risks playing right into the paranoid hands of masculinist discourses of male disempowerment. I would argue if you already think your boys are flesh and blood oppressors in training, even despite all the love you have for them and all the time you've spent raising them and indoctrinating them, that maybe their thoughts about male disempowerment are not paranoid.
Yeah. She's really conflicted here because on the one hand, she says, they feel this way, and to deny that they feel this way, to acknowledge that they feel this way would be wrong. At the same time, I need to let them know that they're wrong. That's really what it comes down to. A couple things jumped out. The phrase that you mentioned, masculinist discourses of male disempowerment. Okay.
You checked out.
I'm becoming like, you know what I mean? If you're a boy, that's it. I am that. All I'm going to be watching is, Joe Rogan.
Right.
And she uses another term, gender agnosticism, which she's tried so hard to inculcate in her boys that, it's just not, it's not set, certainly biological sexes.
Right.
And, at least not since, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton both agreed that, I'm sorry.
These crazy ideas.
I'm talking about gay marriage, but I'm sure she would feel the same way about that, obviously, and anyone who had this insane thought about traditional marriage. Now, the gender agnosticism thing, it then spreads onto biological sex,
right,
and questioning that,
right,
and even somebody like the very vocal atheist Richard Dawkins,
right,
is saying there are only two actual sexes. You can have a question on
I didn't
gender is
know
a whole
Richard
other thing, but
Dawkins was a
a
right-wing
male,
loony.
a female. If you want to talk about trans issues, Martina Navratilova.
Oh, I know.
Man, I mean, she's not
Outspoken.
politically nothing in common.
Just
but,
as a note, by the way, the
yeah.
Dutch government has put the brakes on treatment of minors for gender dysphoria,
That's-
and they were the groundbreaking country in this way.
sure.
So it will be interesting to see where that leads us in the
they
future.
would know if they had a head start on this, they'll
Yes.
know where this is going.
Because they had a lot of data, and the data
Yeah.
wasn't great.
Right. There are a lot of problems with this. My suspicion is, and I mentioned this just now about, if my parent, if my mom was saying things like this, I would be so just lurched to the other side. And
Yes.
case in point, a former colleague of mine, an acquaintance who he went to Georgetown a little bit earlier than I did in the 1980s. He was classmates with a kid, a guy whose mother, I will not say her name, was a very prominent, well-known Democrat in the House. Very well-known. Very big feminist Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that the son could not have been more anti-woman, anti-feminist. I mean, almost like the shame of it, that forced him to be like, I hate women.
I mean,
So, ease up on that. Is
Right.
What I'm going to say.
I mean, I do to an extent. Like, I like that she is acknowledging that perhaps letting her children think is something she should force herself to do. Right?
Herself.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that would
Because
be
she
progress.
wants to stop them from
Right.
her heart wants to stop them, but she's saying I need to make myself. I don't know how successful she's going to be. I also thought this paragraph was interesting because it speaks to the challenges that young men have in a place like, I don't know, college.
Yeah.
If they get there, which they do in much smaller numbers. She says they're having some divergence with their sons. That she's talking about the trend in general, and she says it did not come as a huge surprise to her and her husband. He teaches humanities at a local college where I have taught too, and we've often talked about how tricky it can be to keep hetero boys involved in classroom debates. Many of these young men seem very anxious about saying the wrong thing and will often refuse to participate, sometimes projecting a provocative kind of defensiveness that is its own argument. As much as I think cancel culture is a fake problem in media, it feels very real to young men when they're sitting in a classroom. Whatever they are feeling, it feels real as hell. Insisting that they're imagining their enemies doesn't help. Ma'am, you are running a college classroom, having trouble keeping boys, men, hetero men, involved in the conversation. You think this problem is fake, but even with your own sons, you are admitting that you don't want them talking about verboten subjects at the dinner table. Why would these men over whom you have power feel free to discuss anything in your classroom? I would suggest that the problem's not fake.
Yeah.
Because you have just illustrated the problem.
And I imagine that she and her husband, who teaches humanities, they try to, be more centrist and try to entertain sort of, conservative news like NPR's Morning Edition.
I don't think they even know what centrist would look like.
I think they think they
are
themselves are centrist. I mean, most people are like that. Of course, I believe things like abortion till birth. But that's normal. I mean,
just
and
a
then
normal,
else
totally normal college professor.
40 different pronouns or different kinds of genders. Of course, that's totally normal, and it's evolving.
Look, I am
spirit
to the point of the whole philosophy. First of all, this is so stifling, right? One of the things that on one hand, I want my children to believe real and true things and to have a faith that points them in the right direction and gives them strength when they face challenges. And I want all those things for my kids. Not all of that is ideological, right? Now, I also want them to think about the economy and prosperity and how America is different from other countries and why it's different from other countries. We had a conversation about capitalism this morning.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about one of my kids really likes weird fruits. Like she wants to try dragon fruit and star fruit and all this stuff. And we were talking about the modern miracle it is that brings us these weird fruits, but that they're not as available always, because fewer people want them, which means it's less profitable to sell them.
Demand.
Right.
Yeah.
So we were explaining that to them. I want them to know about those things, but I want them to think about those things.
Right. How does this work? Fewer things, higher prices,
right.
Lots of things, lower prices, things like why, the dynamic. Two things. One, you get the sense they probably don't go to church or synagogue.
I mean,
in terms of their guidance here. Okay. Coming up in the next Weekend Beacon, Naomi Schaefer-Riley, who I love, she's reviewing a book, very interesting book called Life Under Pressure. And it's about a study, an author's study, two authors who are studying a teen suicide cluster. They call it Poplar Grove, but it's a real town, but they gave it a fictitious name. And interviewing the parents, and the parents are saying, and the authors say, the kids, having these kids with all these activities, the kids were our moral guidance. They were our moral center, the kids, and they go to do all the sports things, and that was the thing that bound us together. And Naomi is saying that's not really the sort of the moral foundation is not the kids. There needs to be something else.
Right.
And a lot of parents end up doing a lot of these activities and wondering, why am I doing these activities?
Mm-hmm.
But
I think about that as I sign them up for camps and spring sports.
Yeah.
Yes.
and the travel teams, everything gets so crazy. The other thing is, if I only knew, where this family lived, the author, I would send her a couple books from Christina Huff Summers on boys.
Well, and you know what? She could read Reeves, who
of
the Brookings Institution.
Yes, absolutely.
That would be an approved voice for her, maybe.
Yeah,
that she could read
Brookings.
Boys and Men.
On the other hand, he's seen the light. Okay.
He's talking a lot about boys. I also want to note, just to push back on her idea that boys have no reason to be concerned. The American Psychological Association in 2019 issued guidelines for dealing with male patients, and the therapy industry is way oversampled for women therapists. So it's like men are not super available. So does representation matter? I don't remember. Anyway, in those guidelines, it says traditional masculinity marked by stoicism, competitiveness, dominance, and aggression is on the whole harmful. So when a major organization, credentialing organization, thought leader organization that deals with the mental health, allegedly of men and women, attributes every characteristic of masculinity, just calls it problematic in and of itself, you're not going to get great results treating those people.
They just don't like who they are, and
by the way,
just their very nature.
I saw y'all during COVID. You could use a lot of stoicism. So let's maybe stock up on stoicism. All right. Speaking of COVID.
Oh, yeah.
We have a Now It Can Be Told.
Oh, right.
I know. You forgot. You forgot because we ranted about it to each other, but we haven't ranted about it on the podcast. I believe I pulled this up. Let me play Dr. Phil on The View.
Really something.
Here we go.
Like 08, 09, smartphones came on, and kids stopped living their lives and started watching people live their lives. And so we saw the biggest spike and the highest levels of depression, anxiety, loneliness, and suicidality since records have ever been kept. And it's just continued on and on and on. And then COVID hits 10 years later, and the same agencies that knew that are the agencies that shut down the schools for 2 years. Who does that? Who takes away the support system for these children? Who takes them away and shuts it down? And by the way, when they shut it down, they stopped the mandated reporters from being able to see children that were being abused and sexually molested, and in fact sent them home and abandoned them to their abusers with no way to watch, and referrals dropped 50 to 60%. So
there was also a pandemic going on, and they were trying to save
kids' lives. Remember, we know a lot of folks who died during this. So it wasn't, people weren't laying around eating bond, but, well, you know what? We're lucky. Maybe we're lucky they didn't, because we kept them out of the places that they could be sick, because no one wanted to believe we had an issue.
Are you saying no school children died of COVID?
I'm saying it was the safest group. They were the less vulnerable group, and they suffered and will suffer more from the mismanagement of COVID than they will from the exposure to COVID. And that's not an opinion, that's a fact.
Well, Phil?
Dare they applaud?
Even the View audience knew to applaud that. Amen.
Wow.
How
about that?
Men, and this fact-based, logical, adult argument from Dr. Phil, who they are more friendly to than perhaps another voice that might bring that argument, is met with the height of childish ignorance.
Yeah.
Just, hey, we were saving people from dying.
If the other side thinks it was bad, then they are forced then to say it's good, right? If Randy Weingarten is vilified, then they have to come to Randy Weingarten's defense. Whoopi is gonna Whoopi, right? She's gonna do her thing, but one of the things she says is, maybe we were just lucky. It's called science.
No,
and the data came out early.
If we were lucky and or smart, we would have prevented a bunch of harm to children by not overreacting in this way. By the way, I love this idea that she's like, people didn't want to understand we had a problem. No. You were so willing to believe we had a problem that you projected it onto tiny children who actually didn't have a problem.
Dr. Phil could have mentioned.
Largely. I want to be clear. We're not saying not one child died. Tragically, some did, but the numbers were exceedingly low. And in most cases, those children they had comorbidities. They were immunocompromised, and it's terrible. But Dr. Phil could have mentioned the recovery rate for children, even back then for the earlier variants, was 99.996%. Well, and then
there's
the argument.
There's not a reason to. It's like, for everybody else, again, like the Barrington Declaration, for the rest of us, we should go out and let us spend a lot of resources and care for those who can't.
Right. Not only are the View folks just sticking to this long debunked position. Yeah. Long ago debunked position. I would say debunked in real time, but everyone was just pretending like it was real. The Wrap reports Dr. Phil doubles down on COVID complaints that stunned the View hosts and gets debunked again. All right, let me just outline. First of all, her claim is to refute Dr. Phil saying that children were not susceptible to life-threatening reactions to this virus means that they suffered more from the quarantine than they ever would have from the virus. It's obviously true.
Yeah.
The reality is, says this reporter, according to the Mayo Clinic, children are as likely to get COVID-19 as adults, just less likely to become severely ill.
Okay. Thank you.
The severely ill part matters a lot, guys. Yeah. It matters a lot. Now,
it's like getting the flu, but how many people, it's they're trying to just, anyway, go ahead.
John
Fugelsang,
saying, famous scientist and just kidding. He's just a former VJ.
Okay, sorry. It's right over.
John Fugelsang, who's like a Twitter politician now and I guess an XM Sirius host. He says, though, Dr. Phil, they could pass it to more vulnerable people, right? Okay, so
You're going to kill grandma.
This is
or
the
your
2020, 2021 argument that, by the way, was still being used in 2021 and even into 2022 in my school district, which is, I guess if you want to kill grandma, you can come to school. That was that was the argument. In reality, the data in every place they studied this, and you can go from study to study to study, found that the community spread was often more than what was anything driven by schools. Like it was these two things were not related. If anything, children in school had less community spread.
And they knew this in Europe, by the way, which is why the kids went back earlier, and they weren't insisting on all the kids getting back.
By the way, having all the children with a cohort that is the same in one school building during this pandemic actually logically makes sense that they would be spreading it less because they are then less exposed to fewer places and fewer contacts, right? According to the
Right.
The zero COVID folks. Instead, we had them like running from grandma's house to aunt's house to what? Not at school.
Yeah.
These people don't actually know what happened in schools. They don't actually know about any of the studies.
Well, they'd rather look away.
They're ignorant.
Yeah.
They're ignorant, and they
they'd rather look away.
pretend that everyone else is ignorant. Keep on keeping on, Dr. Phil, because you're right.
Yeah,
you're right. Let me see
so
all the
insane.
studies,
It was
all
an
the
insane
studies that
time.
Fugelsang cites.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's just grandma dying. Just you're gonna kill grandma.
That was his. Yeah.
The data does not support.
Yeah.
That children were more dangerous. The data does not support that children were dangerous to others. Just doesn't.
Yeah. We know that, and our listeners know that.
If it saves one life.
So again, I mean, a lot. I'm just kidding.
Can I go on a separate quick rant real quick?
Please.
Speaking of if it saves one life, where's a place they don't care about that particular line? The liberals in Athens, Georgia.
Oh. Well, yeah.
I'm just gonna.
Yes.
Just real quick, let me freelance this one. The mayor of Athens, Georgia, gave a press conference.
Yep.
Where am I from the Midwest all of a sudden? A press conference in which, just astoundingly, he said that his priority, when people are asking him to address the first in 30 years murder on campus committed by an illegal immigrant, and like maybe looking at the fact that declaring this city very friendly to people of all statuses, which he's on tape saying in 2019, as is the sheriff, as is the DA, that perhaps examining that might be part of how you make your city safer, and you have a duty to your students, to your citizens, to make them safe. He says his priorities are actually, wait for it, the possibility of vitriol toward illegal immigrants from American citizens. Okay, so that's...
And while you're at it, Islamophobia.
Right. So that's just speech, by the way. That's potential speech.
Yeah.
That's
hurtful.
the threat.
It could be hurtful.
Hurtful speech. That's the threat. The backlash is the problem. This is the Norm Macdonald joke come to life, which is, man, what really terrifies me is if ISIS set off a nuke and killed 50 million Americans, just imagine the Islamophobia backlash. Right. This is the joke.
Yeah.
So he says that's his concern. Not the physical safety of citizens in his town.
No, I mean, he'd rather, you might lose a few people, but at least you're not going to have bad thoughts or say bad things.
The progressive omelet.
It'll be worth it.
Requires a few eggs.
That's right. This is beginning to happen. The stories are coming out now, right? And it's not just Georgia. It's Louisiana. It's D.C. I don't know if we're just becoming more aware of, who commits crimes in general, and they happen to be these, illegal immigrants, or are we beginning to, is this just the beginning?
Right.
Because we have let in more than 7 million under the Biden administration.
So,
and a percentage, we're not saying all, but a percentage might have come here not with the best of intentions. And by the way, thereby vindicating Trump when he said that they're letting in all killers and rapists.
They're not sending us their best.
Yeah.
The Atlanta Journal-Constitution, by the way, backs up the mayor by saying, not fair, after UGA killing, Venezuelans in Georgia worry about backlash. So that's the concern. That's number one. Mm-hmm. This is like the Covenant shooting in Nashville where they suddenly made Democratic lawmakers into the victims.
It was amazing.
It was amazing. You can alchemy any victim. Look.
And members of the trans community.
I do not wish for there to be any unlawful backlash. Am I concerned about people's rhetoric? No, I'm not. I am concerned about people's physical safety, particularly the people this guy's supposed to be protecting, and is not. And this was just like a mind-blowing performance. And I understand that his constituency is not me, but there's a lot of people who live in Georgia, who have students who go to Georgia, who are normal people, and like you and I both are willing to be like, yeah, of course, not every single person coming across the border is committing violent crimes, but if you're letting in 7 million people, they're largely unvetted. Many of them are military-aged single men, okay? Yeah. I think it's fair to say the profile of who arrives over the border in the past 10 years has changed. Yes. So perhaps the crime statistics might change.
Right.
Then you have a place like Athens, Georgia, which the guy is claiming it's not a sanctuary city because Georgia doesn't allow it to call itself a sanctuary city. But it's like Randy Weingarten saying she did everything to keep the schools open, get the schools open. It's like,
it's amazing.
In practice, they do all the things, and they say they're doing all the things to be a sanctuary city. So then you're sending the signal that if you come here and you commit crimes, your asylum claim is not in danger. It's not in danger. And they say, oh, well, we want to be concerned about the collateral consequences to undocumented immigrants should we jail them and arrest them and report them to ICE. Well, the collateral damage is now at least one young woman's life.
Oh, and more, as you're seeing again in other places now.
So, like, forgive me if I'm upset about it.
Just as a point of comparison, by the way, the Mariel boat lift, right, in 1980 when Castro let a lot of 125,000 Cubans arrived in Florida. One of the Florida newspapers a few years later did a study and said of that 125,000, between 16 and 20,000 were criminals.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He purposely he wanted to empty out the jails and to make room for the political prisoners and the priests. So
anyway, we should play at least one quote of this mayor just so you guys can get a feeling for it. And there were people shouting him down in this press conference.
He was heckled.
The reality is that those families tend to be blended amongst a variety of immigration statuses. We want to create a stable environment for people in our communities. And when that community is disrupted by hate or vitriol, that's not a safe environment for their school children and their families to live in.
Called righteous indignation.
There are Athens residents setting up, rallies. I think there's a hashtag Keep Athens Safe that people are gathering under, and they're lobbying to get this DA removed. But this to me is insane for a public servant to come out there and say that. But he'll probably triple down. That's what that's what people do now.
Yeah, he's leaning in.
COVID was very dangerous for young children, and it's not my job to protect citizens. It's my job to protect illegal immigrants from the speech of citizens.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. We could be thoroughly depressed, and people say you're right. That's really what matters. Let's not mention her name again.
I know. Yeah, well, this isn't a say her name situation. Her name is Laken Riley, by the way. She was 22 years old. She had a great life ahead of her. And now that was all taken from her and her family and her friends. Ugh. Sorry to bring us all down. Do we have something silly at the end?
Wendy's.
Oh, Wendy's.
So there's been a lot of talk about this because Elizabeth Warren, the senator from Massachusetts, has weighed in. What happened was the CEO of Wendy's just happened to float the idea, saying we might test this idea of having prices at our restaurants fluctuate depending on demand. It's a very capitalist free market idea. That they would learn the hard way is probably not a great idea.
Yeah.
In other words, during peak hours,
much
like an Easy Pass lane, your Baconator, which normally runs $8.29, don't ask me why I know that, would be like $16 or something.
Oh, wow.
So, because, there's a lot of people. There's a huge blow up. They did not use, now to be fair, Wendy's didn't use the term surge pricing, but that's basically what the idea is.
Yeah.
I will say this, and I'm curious what your thought is. The only way this would work is if, like how you go on an Easy Pass lane or the express lanes, and it tells you how much it costs, right?
Right.
Sometimes it's $2, $1.25 if you're, if things are really quiet, and then sometimes it's like $27. It's insane. If the Baconator is $8.29, could there be off hours where it's $6? Because if that's the case,
I'm looking for.
If that's the case, my lunch is at 10 a.m. And it's high. My suspicion, though, is that the base price is $8 and it only goes up.
Yeah,
that would be bad.
So here's the thing. This is a little something called a price signal. Okay, folks. And often our friends left of center don't understand anything about how price signals work, which is why you get price gouging allegations when the price signal is just actually allocating goods efficiently and making sure that, say, like plywood in a zone where a hurricane might be coming is used for people who really need it for a hurricane and not for just like whatever your Etsy craft is that day. Because it's more worth it to cover your house with plywood for a higher price than it is to make your Etsy craft that day. Okay. I mean, all the plywood's expensive now because Bidenomics, but do we need such price signals?
Yeah.
at Wendy's during lunchtime is the question, right? And I think...
And you're hungry.
Right. I think what they ran into
Angry.
here is, in theory, this would keep your crowd... This would do crowd control for you,
Yeah.
because the people who really want a Baconator
Right.
will be willing to outlay that cost for the Baconator, right? And so you'll get fewer people, but they'll pay more money. But I think what people want from fast food is predictability.
It's like we're on the same page.
Oh my gosh, look at that.
What people want is stability. People want there's too many variables in life in general.
I can't be thinking about this.
If it's expensive, I already know going in, I'm ready to pay that price. It's fine. But I don't need to be thrown for a loop and like, how much is it today?
Although I
at
will
12:30 p.m.
Someone made a smart point, and I don't know who it was. Might have been Scott Lincecum on Twitter, which was whispers, standing in line is its own form of surge pricing.
Yeah.
Right? So your time is being
time.
used
Yeah.
because the price
right.
signal is not bringing the line down.
Right.
Anyway, it's all about cost-benefit analysis, guys.
My
And
other,
we all know that the View ladies can't do that kind of shit.
they
so.
do not do that sort of stuff. My other concern was, were all prices being affected? Like the price fluctuation, does the entire menu shift up and down depending on
just
how many
the
people?
Baconator?
Or is it just the Baconator? Because if that's the case,
Oh.
I'm eating the, I have it here, the curry bean veggie burger. Something tells me not very popular.
You're not eating that, first of all. That's not happening.
It's just for the show. It's material.
I had a spicy chicken sandwich from there the other day.
And?
And definitely spicy. So I'm not going to hit it on that front. I don't know that it's my favorite spicy chicken sandwich.
I thought you were going to say, I don't know if it's really chicken.
No. No, it's definitely chicken. But I have many friends who swear by that sandwich.
Yeah.
They love that sandwich, and it was not my fave. I prefer a spicy chicken sandwich from elsewhere.
Yes. Hot Lola's is a great place. Shake Shack does one.
I mean, he's going high end over here.
I know I am. But you know what? You walk in there, you already know you're paying $15.
I had the Popeyes one like
Oh, yeah.
6 months after it was hot because this is how I do. The price signal to me was I don't want to stand in that line, so I'm going to wait until it's not cool anymore, and then I'm going to go. And that one was pretty good.
Yeah, it's like a whole big piece of meat. That's what I want. It's not processed. Although you'll be surprised, there are people I know who like, oh, they love, like my daughter, the chicken McNuggets from McDonald's. Those are not actual chicken pieces.
Yeah.
I mean, it's it's ground.
You know what, Vic?
It's ground chicken.
Just be careful with her. Don't let her have her own thoughts.
Oh, no.
Okay, at the dinner table while she's having her nuggets, okay?
No, I know. It's very upsetting.
You gotta push her where she needs to go. She's a flesh and blood oppressor in training.
She is a flesh and blood. That wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. And you can follow me on Twitter at Victorina Mattis.
I'm at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. You can follow the show at Getting Hammered Podcast on YouTube and Instagram. And you should, so you can see our shining faces. Thanks for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media Podcast.